Hey, Run Elite, Andrew Snow here, and this is an interview that I was honored to be on. It's the Progression Health podcast by Ross Dempsey. You can find the link below if you want to watch on his channel as well. I highly recommend. But I want to just orient you here before we jump in. So our intention here was to go through all kinds of questions and really cover a lot of ground. And the way that this interview went was that we really focused on the main things that it's going to take to really have a breakthrough in your performance. Now, you might think that that is the training that you're doing, the workouts that you're doing, the pacing that you're doing, and the tactics of your race. Now, that is important. It's really important. But what we're going to do on this podcast here is we're going to highlight the things that are even more important, the things that drive you to take the action to set up those workouts and to have success long term. So I hope that you enjoy this. We are going to do a version 2 of this. We're going to do a part 2 that really narrows in even more on the specifics of the training and setting up your training. So come back here and we will link that after we film number 2. But number 1 is available right now. I think that you're going to love this. We went really deep. And we did some kind of like mock coaching and real-time coaching with Ross as well, because he might have some similar goals to you. Are you wanting to run your first marathon? How about a sub 3-hour marathon or something kind of in between? Well, I coach him on that in real time. I think you're gonna like this process. Let's jump into the video and I'll see you there.
Welcome to the Progression Health podcast. I'm here with runner and coach Andrew Snow. Andrew, do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. Hi. I'm Andrew. I have a business called Run Elite, but really it's kind of like the way that I help people is not in a traditional way. A lot of times coaches, they print out that nice PDF and give you the workouts to do. You put it up on your fridge and you check them off. And that's really important. And that's what a lot of runners do. And you can get that in books and Google and all that stuff. But the truth is that a lot of runners don't really hit the potential that they know that they could. And so it's not the plan. You have infinite plans that you could get. So what I do is I hit this on a different level. Yeah, we do the training for sure at a world-class level, but I see that as only like the tertiary thing. What really matters is your health, what you eat, how you sleep, what you think, what your habits are. These things are going to determine the ability that you have to train at a higher level. So we address that. And then even more importantly is, why are you doing this? The only reason anybody wants anything is because we think we'll feel a certain way when we get it. So if you don't have a reason other than the time on the clock for going for the time that you're training for, the distance that you're training for, it's not likely to stick. It's not likely to stick long term, that's for sure. And when something happens, if you get injured or if there's a worldwide lockdown like we experienced and races go away, there's not much reason to keep going for it. So we hit it on like a much higher level than just the training plan. And my runners get outstanding results with that. I don't want to like just sit here and like brag about my runners, but I'm really proud of them because they take this seriously. And a lot of runners, when they think about training seriously, it's like, let me try really hard and kind of be like Rocky Balboa and just work harder. And that's not really going to lead you where you want in the long term. It can peak you for a short period of time, but then you get injured, you burn out, or you plateau. And so becoming a better runner long-term is about the compounded effects that you get from being healthier, having better habits, and doing training, not just at a higher and higher and higher level, because you'll get injured or burnt out, but having your training exist in a structure where you're building a foundation that you can stack upon workouts that then support the really big workouts that will blast off your performance and get you a peak. And so this isn't anything that I've created. It's something that I've refined, but I've learned this from the greatest coaches in the world, Renato Canova, Brad Hudson, Coach E. Gloy from back in the 50s, and these coaches produced many world record holders, world champions, outstanding runners. And we kind of take the principles from them and take it so it's more accessible to the average runner. And the way that I coach is if you make a decision that you want to get something much bigger in your running, not a goal, not a wishful thinking, not I think I should do this, or not what the next step is, but knowing what it is you really want out of your running, and then making a decision that you're going to do it. And then bridging the gap is the art form to it. So there's the science of training, but then the art form of how we get there is really what coaching is for. But the art form of getting there doesn't matter if you don't really know what you want, why you want it, and where you are accurately. So that's how I help people. In my own running, I've been running for 28 years, I guess. Yeah, that's about right. I'm 38 years old. I've run cross country, indoor track, outdoor track, road racing, road marathons, trail running, ultra running. My current passion is ultra running on the trails. I do 50 mile, 100 mile, 200 mile races because that's what I love at this point in my career. And I do well at those. I'm not the best in the world. I'm not an Olympian, but I do very well for myself. And I came from a place where I really sucked. I talk about this in my book. Like when I was in high school, I was dead last, 121st out of 123 at cross country regional meet. I mean, I was back there, and I got to a place that I think a lot of runners would be happy to get to, and I'm certainly happy to get here. And it was certainly consistency. And then to get to the levels that I've got in ultra running came down to nutrition, lifestyle, consistency, and being able to train every day. I run every single day, being able to do that without burning out, without getting hurt, without getting injured. So a little bit about my coaching and a little bit about me.
Fascinating. Yeah. So I came across your content on YouTube, and your channel Run Elite is fantastic, really well put together. You know, I really, it's like entertaining but informative. It's a nice intersection there. So just with your own running, so you finished dead last, close to dead last. What kept you going, and what did you like really sort of get out of running that led you to where you are now?
Yeah, it's changed over time. I can remember in high school, I mean, I was really bad. I wouldn't say I was bad because I was enjoying it. And that's kind of a good takeaway for people who are listening here is like, it doesn't matter what your time on the clock is. It matters if you enjoy the process, because you can always go faster. So even if your goal is to like win an age group, well, go to a more competitive race and you don't win the age group anymore. Or if you want to break 3 hours in the marathon, cool. But then you're in a world of sub 3 hour marathoners, and now you want to break 250 and then 240, and then it never ends. Then you want to be a world record holder. Then Kelvin Kiptum, it never ends. So if we measure our success by the time on the clock, we can be a success or a failure. And by that standard, by that metric in high school, I was really bad. I remember indoor track, freshman year, I literally got dead last. I ran the 1500 and the 3000 meters, and I ran them both at every meet, and every race of every meet, I got dead last all season. But I didn't care. I was getting faster. I enjoyed it. I got made fun of a couple times. I remember in outdoor track, they used to run the 2 mile with the boys and the girls together just to save time. And I got beat by a girl from the neighboring, I was dead last for the guys, but also I got beat by one of the women from the other team. I didn't care. It was fun. We were racing each other back and forth. I ran a PR. I think I can remember most of my times from back then. I think I ran like a 12:18 freshman in high school in the 2 mile. And I was really proud of myself. And then I came to school the next day, and there was a bunch of kids like making fun of me because I got beat by a girl. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, I just ran my fastest time. So what kept me going was I just loved running. I don't know why I loved running. I just always sort of had. I felt really inspired. My teacher, when I was in first grade, put on the Boston Marathon, and I went to school like pretty close to Boston, and she just paused school for the day and put on the Boston Marathon, 1991. And I just remember seeing this guy. Well, I got goosebumps. Look at that. The guy who won, I think his name was Hussein, something, his last name was Hussein. And he was way ahead. You know how sometimes in a marathon, people just like jet ahead, and for like 10 miles, they're like a quarter mile ahead of everybody else. And someone who's not a runner thinks that that person is amazing and they're so fast. And we know as experienced runners, they're going to get reeled in and they're not going to win almost ever. But I didn't know that as a kid. I just saw this dude who bolted off the starting line and was winning this thing. And I thought it was so cool. And that kind of planted a seed that I wanted to do something like that. And I didn't take action on that until I got to 6th grade and I ran cross country, and I didn't take it seriously at all. I even remember, I don't remember this exactly, but I think that I cut the course one time when I was in like 6th grade because I was just there to like show up. But once I got to high school, something switched in me. I knew that there were like tryouts coming up for sports because one of my friends was going to play soccer and you had to try out to make the team. So I thought that I had to try out for cross country. So I took it seriously. Over the summer, I trained. And I made it. Turns out you don't have to try out for cross country, but I thought you did. So I started taking it like really serious. And that's kind of where I got more passionate about it. And it was really dramatic back in those days. I remember every race was life or death. And it was like this false ego, like Prefontaine kind of. It's like, I'm going to die or bleed and you'll never keep up. And I can kill myself. And I think a lot of young runners particularly have that, high school and college. And I kind of let off how dramatic it was after college, and I ran a little bit more for enjoyment. And then really only once I hit the trails and became like a serious trail runner did I kind of let go of the pace and the time as well. Because these runs are on mountains, and you could run, I can run a 50K on a flat in like, I ran a 50K on like a flat trail in like 3:27 or something like that. And then I've run 50Ks that are like straight up and straight down, and they take like 5.5 hours. Same distance. So I kind of like let go of the times as well. And I got more connected to just being in touch with my body and feeling how the hills and the distance, like running them intelligently and connecting with nature and myself, maybe putting on a podcast from time to time or just silence for like hours. And that's really where my love continues of it this day. So it's kind of changed over time. It went from like hyper competitive all the way to, I'm not competitive at all until it's like the last miles of a race. And then I will be. And I do it much more for enjoyment and lifestyle now.
Brilliant. So if you have a client now who is in that kind of hyper competitive stage, I feel like I'm sort of in that right now, and it's only, year 3 for me in running. Do you go with that, or do you try and kind of dissuade them away and try and make it more like intrinsic and internal? How do you coach a client like that?
Yeah, I never tell anybody what they should do or shouldn't do, but I ask them questions. And inevitably, when someone is really, like if you're really competitive, good. Like be competitive. There's nothing wrong with that. But what is it that we're trying to achieve? And for example, a marathoner might come to me and their best time is 4 hours and 5 minutes, but they want to get a Boston qualifier, which is whatever, let's say it's 3 hours, 20 minutes. And they're really serious about it. So they say, and I might ask them, okay, if we take you from a 4:05 and you're wanting to get to a 3:20, let's say that 3 months from now, which is really rapid, in just 3 months, if we can get you to a 3:30, is that success or failure? And what I'm doing when I ask that question is I'm kind of trying to trap them in a loving way. But I know I've done this conversation enough that I know how it's going to go. Most people are going to say, yeah, that's failure. Why? Because I missed my goal of 3:20 and I hold myself to the standard and I want that 3:20 and I will not settle. Yeah, but I didn't say don't continue on to get to 3:20. That's just 3 months. And we made that much progress that quickly. Keep going. And a couple months later, then get the sub 3:20. And they say, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. But when we say it like that, it kind of shows, it illustrates that our minds say that we want this goal and that we're only successful if we hit that goal. But I would say that if you're moving towards, like, it depends when you measure. If you want to take an hour off of your marathon, maybe you want to do that in like a year. So if you measure after 4 months and you're not there yet, it doesn't mean you failed. It means we've measured early. Just keep going. But consequently, if you planned to do it in a year, to take an hour off your marathon and you've taken off 55 minutes and then you run that race and you didn't hit your time, is that success or failure? It's failure to the person who needs the time on the clock, but it's success to the person who is more process oriented, the person who feels good about growing, learning, showing up, being consistent, avoiding injury, improving their health, progressing, getting multiple PRs along the way, becoming more intelligent as a runner, becoming more efficient as a runner, and moving towards their goal. These are the things that we want. And so when someone is like hyper stubborn about the goal, oftentimes I don't want to take that away from them. Go get the goal. But the problem is if you miss that goal for whatever reason, you measured early, for example, or something came up, maybe you got an injury and it would have been better to back off your goal and do it later rather than push through and kill yourself. Sometimes it's a better decision to do that. And if the person feels like it was a failure because they didn't hit the time, I think that that is a failure. Because who cares if you get the time if you didn't enjoy your life in the process? I mean, you could be a world record holder, but if you alienated your friends and lost your job and destroyed your health and killed your finances and all that stuff in order to get it, it might not have been what you wanted. You got the world record, yay, and you're alone and bitter and poor and dying, right? It's the quality. We only want it because we think we'll feel a certain way. And if you ask a lot of people, most people don't know this at all. It takes a lot of digging. Some people do. And I applaud you if someone listening knows these answers to these already. But why do you want the time? Well, because it's always been a goal of mine. Okay, why has it always been a goal of yours? Because, and we kind of like trace it back to when you have the goal that you're saying you want, what do you now feel? Well, I'll feel successful. I'll feel fulfilled. I'll feel like I'm older, but faster than when I was younger, which makes me feel like I can do anything. And it makes me know that I can keep my promises to myself and do hard things and things like that. So, okay, so the goal is to feel those things. And if you feel those, but you miss your goal by 1 minute, is that success or failure? Oh yeah, well, that would be success. Exactly. It's not the time on the clock. I'm not telling people not to get the time on the clock, but when you flip the script, instead of getting the time on the clock in order to be fulfilled, we flip that script and you as a fulfilled person, naturally get the time on the clock. That is how you continue on for longevity. That is how you enjoy the process. And the dirty little secret is that's how you get the fast time too, because you're more likely to, instead of give up if something gets hard or if you get injured, adapt and do the cross training or change your diet or let go of that relationship that gives you a lot of stress that holds you back or something like that. When you're becoming more fulfilled along the way, you naturally have the time. So if you want to be a sub 3 hour marathoner, become a sub 3 hour marathoner. And then of course you can run the sub 3 because you are that person. And so that's really the goal of coaching, is to become the kind of person who naturally has the goal. And another thing that does is it takes away the pressure on race day. It's just like the party. It's the cherry on top. Go for the sub 3 and you'll get it. If you've become a sub 3 hour marathoner and you run the race, you'll get it. And if you don't, for whatever reason, there's a hurricane or you sprained your ankle or the race gets shut down or something like that, then it doesn't affect your fulfillment. It's just, yeah, I'm a sub 3 hour marathoner. It just wasn't my day because there was hail and a headwind. I'll get it next time. And it doesn't take your emotion and make you feel like you lost or failed. It's just, whatever. I love the process. I'm here. I'll do it next time. And it wasn't my time. And that's really how I coach people, is we flip that script so that you become the kind of person who naturally has the result that you want. And whatever result that is, it could be huge. It could be a massive PR, or it could be a massive distance run or something else. Oftentimes it's with health as well. And we get massive results there as well.
Fascinating. So it sounds as though you kind of modify the parameters for success. You kind of like widen sort of the goalposts in a way, and then kind of simultaneously you set multiple goals as opposed to just like a hard pass fail of like that 3 hours. Would you say that's kind of your style?
Yeah, that's interesting. It kind of just depends on how you look at it. I'm not trying to change what anybody wants. If you have a goal, go get it. But it's not like, I'm just saying that people don't know what they want in general. I want more money. Why? So that I can feel freedom from the IRS knocking at my door all the time. So you want freedom. Can we cultivate freedom before the money rolls in? And from a place of being free, are you more or less likely to make the money that you wanted? It's just a way of like flipping it so that you get the result now. And it's not so much about hitting benchmarks along the way. We do that too. But what I really like for people to do is like get the biggest result, the way they want to feel, get that now. Let's not wait. You're going to get it now. We're going to start cultivating it now. The health that you want, the speed that you want, the feelings you want. And then we just allow the race times to happen. It doesn't mean we don't train for them or peak for them. But when it comes to races, we also want to know what race is most important to us. And it's often not the next race. So if you have a marathon in like, there's a lot of people who are signed up for fall marathons. So they got 8, 9, 10 months from now. And that's the race where they really want to kill it. And they're also signed up for a half marathon in April. This was one of the calls I had this morning. So the question becomes, from where you are now in February, are we focusing on the April half marathon, or are we focusing on the marathon in October? Well, can't I have both? Yeah, you can run both, but which one's most important? And if the answer is the marathon in October, then what happens to April? What I suggest for most people is that they focus on what's happening long-term, and they bridge the gap from where they are to what they really want long-term. Bridge that gap. And along the way, there's a lot of great stuff that happens. Like you almost certainly will PR in your half marathon as well on the way, but we do it maybe in base training, as opposed to if we try to peak you for that half marathon and then recover and then peak you for the marathon, you got 2 kind of half-assed training cycles. But if we do a big training cycle for the one you really want, you'll get a better result here. And consequently, base training is so impactful that you're very likely, unless you measure super early, but even if it's pretty dang early, like a month or 2, you are often likely to still run an excellent race in those tune-up races. But then it changes your mindset, because if you run a PR, and my clients do this all the time, if you run a PR in that half marathon and you're only 3 months in and you're not even training for it. Now, if you peaked for that half marathon and you're running a PR, it's like you kind of expect it. But if you are training for the marathon and you PR in the half marathon and you weren't training for it because you're training for this one, if you do that, it's kind of magical, because not only do you get a fast time, but also you start to wonder, it's like, wow, I got a PR and I wasn't even training for it. What's going to happen at the race that I am training for? And you start to get this upward spiral of confidence. And you only do that when you know what the longer term goal is and you set your sights on it and let everything else fall away. They can be training runs, they can be tune-up races. You can run them hard, but we don't put the emotion and the focus of training in it. You train for this one and you let the other ones kind of unfold as you go.
Wow. So you said something really interesting is, most people don't know what they want. So is that a kind of a due to people not having good coaches, or, does social media kind of confuse people, or do people lack confidence or self-belief? What do you think is going on there?
Yeah, it's not just with running, it's with anything. And it's a little bit abrasive to say that, but it's true. And the best way to say this is if you ask someone what they want, they'll probably think about it and they'll give you something kind of general. But if you ask them what their goals are, again, it might be kind of general, but if you ask them to see their journal where they've written down their goals, they probably don't have one. If you ask them for the list of the goals they're working on, they probably don't have it. They might be able to retrieve a couple things out of here, but they just don't know. They don't know specifically enough. So to say that you want, I even have this on my intake form. If you apply for coaching with me on the intake form, it asks you about your goals and it says, do not put run faster, run longer. Be more specific than that. And still, half of the intake forms I get say run faster, run longer. I'm like, okay, if you want to run faster, just run a shorter distance. You're faster. If you want to run longer, just run slower and take walking breaks. There you go. You don't need coaching. And then they'll say, yeah, but that's not what I meant. I mean, I know that's not what you meant because you didn't know what you mean. So what is it? And then we start to refine it. Oh, I actually want to run. And they get a little bit more narrowed in. We're moving towards it now. And then we'll test it. What if you missed that? What if you got close to it but missed it? You would still be fulfilled. So it's not that goal either. It's the fulfillment moving towards it. Now we're getting closer. Why do you care about being fulfilled in that? Are you fulfilled in other areas of your life? And a lot of times, I don't know, maybe 25% of the time, that's probably about accurate. Runners are often running as a release from the stress of their life, from their family, from their job, and running is like a me time kind of thing. So if we train them really hard and they might burn out or get injured, how many of you have ever got injured and then you feel depressed because you need your running to cope with life sometimes? So if we know that honestly early on, that's part of the goal, it's not the time on the clock. It's also you need this coping because this is a healthy way for you to have time for yourself. If we know that as part of the goal, then we would train a little bit differently. We would train in a more sustainable way, maybe a more consistent way, maybe a more high frequency of training way. So you get more bouts of this me time for yourself. And we change the way your training is so that it meets the actual need that you have. And I'm telling you that on first ask and even on third or fourth or 10th ask, a lot of times people don't know what it is, but it's not just with running, right? It's with relationships. What do you want? I want a good person who's got this and a stable. Okay, but is that it? Maybe. What about finances? A lot of times people say, I want more money. Well, here's $1. Now get out of here. Well, that's not what I meant. I know it's not what you meant. So more money is not what you meant. It's what you want to have. You can have more money if you just work all the time and don't sleep and don't spend time with your family. Well, that's not what I meant either. So you actually want what? More value for the time you put in, more scalability, return on investments long-term? And when we start asking those questions, you can see how the plan becomes completely different. And knowing what you want, this hasn't come from me. I've learned this from people who are far smarter than I. But even in the business world, I'm reminded of, so many. I'll give you a couple here. Brian Tracy, if you know who he is, he's a great business coach. He's got something like 200 books or something like that. And he talks about the power of just knowing what you want, writing it down, and then putting your focus into that. But it has to be clearly defined. And the great author, Napoleon Hill, many great books by Napoleon Hill. I highly suggest reading any of his books. His most well-known book is called Think and Grow Rich. It's a good place to start. It's not his greatest book. It's just his most popular one. The Law of Success or Outwitting the Devil are two of my favorites. But he again talks about the importance of two things: knowing what it is that you want, clearly defined, and making a decision that you're going to do it. That's it. That's our job. And the way that it unfolds, even in your running, is different for everybody. There's different paths to get to that same outcome. But if you don't know what the outcome really is, you can't really get it. Because if you want to just get faster in your running, just go do some intervals, man. And then you want to get faster next week, go do those intervals faster. And then you want to get faster next week, do more of those intervals faster. And it'll work, but it has diminishing return until injury, burnout, plateau, you don't enjoy it anymore. So it works in the short term, but unless you know what it is that's going to give you, you can't create the long-term plan. So I do think that people really don't know what they want for the most part. And just knowing that, clearly defined, and it does take some time. It does take some work. You're unlikely to, even listening to this right now, it is unlikely that you're going to come up with the reason why you're doing this. It takes some digging. It doesn't take that much digging, but maybe 10 solid minutes, probably more, maybe a couple of hours, maybe like a week, maybe like a little retreat, something like that, and really getting after this. And it's time well spent. And few people do it. That's partly what a coach does as well. Like, part of the magic of a good coach is that someone has to show up on the phone or in the course or on the Zoom call or whatever it is, or in person. And during that time, they've blocked out everything else so that they can focus on the one thing that they're trying to address in their life with someone who's on their team to help them accelerate. Now, regardless of what the coach tells them to do, and this could be any kind of coaching, running or not, regardless of what the coach tells them to do, the very fact that that person made a decision that they're really going to show up, and assuming that they also have a meaningful goal that they really want and is well defined, if they have that, they've already done half or more than half of the work. And that's like part of the magic of working with any mentor. It doesn't have to be an athletic coach. It could be a therapist or any kind of professional who's going to help you. A lot of the magic is just that you block off everything else. You put your hyper focus for a finite period of time on learning and getting better in one area. You do that and you're going to progress.
Wow, very good. So for me personally, my goal is long-term is to run a sub 3 hour marathon, but I'm kind of years out from that. I've only been running 3 years. So let's say you were to work with somebody like that who has the 3 hour marathon goal, where would you start in terms of kind of drilling down to the sort of the deeper why behind it? And like, how long would it take? Like, could it be a one call thing in your coaching, or would it take multiple calls?
Well, that depends on you. So what is your history? Do you want to do like a little bit? We probably don't have time to go into like a whole coaching thing with you, but let me just ask you some questions. How close are you currently? If you're a 3:05 marathoner, it's going to look a lot different than if you're a 4:30 marathoner. So where are you currently?
So currently the longest distance I've ever run is 15 miles, and I've just done 5 halves, and I've done the fastest one in 1:34.
Okay. So I would start by just asking you questions. 3 hours is a nice round number. So a lot of people say it. All the numbers that people throw out there, they normally end in 0 or 00. So I can understand 3 hours is significant. But so let me ask you this. You've never run a marathon. If you ran a 20-mile training run, do you feel like you're successful? I didn't say stop there, but if you work up to a 20-mile training run and it didn't kill you and you recovered from it, okay, is this in the right direction?
Totally. Yeah. That'd be like a huge achievement. Yeah.
Okay. So let's extrapolate this. What if you ran 26 miles, 26.2 miles in training and it didn't kill you? We don't know what the time is. It's pretty dang slow. But if you did that, is that moving towards your goal? Does it feel good? You're getting more fit. You're more ready for this sub-3 attempt later on?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Simply because you ran the distance. Okay. What if you did that same distance, but you did it in a formal race? It wasn't your peak race, but you ran 3:55. If you went and ran a marathon next month in 3:55, how do you feel?
Very accomplished.
Okay. Most people would not say that. We'll go round and round in circles because what you missed your sub-3 by 55 minutes. It's not even close. Yeah. Cool. But you ran 11 miles longer than you've ever run in your entire life. Clearly that's bridging the gap. I mean, you have to be able to do that first before you can run it fast, right? So we would kind of start with a conversation like this about how big is this gap and how you know you'll be successful. So second is if you want to break 3, what's your timeline on that? Because it's going to look way different if you want to do it in 3 months versus 3 years. Totally different. So what's your timeline?
I think my timeline is somewhere around like 3 years to like, I don't know, 5 or so.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
And why so long? 5 years. How old are you?
I'm 31. And so the scenario you described earlier on of, being burned out, feeling depressed, I was like that this time last year. So I know how bad it can be if I don't take a long-term approach. So having learned from that experience, I am coming at it from an opposite kind of way or mindset where it's like, I'm young, I don't need to rush. So there's the long-term 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So I think that you can have whatever timeline that you want. It's your life. But I would also urge you to go more rapidly than that, because I think you could surprise yourself. When you don't need to take time because you've burnt out or you've overtrained, if you can be consistent, you could probably do this far sooner than 5 years. 5 years is a lifetime, man. I'm not saying that you should, but I think that possibly the reason you're picking that is because you believe right now that it's a reasonable and it's intelligent. You're trying to learn from the past, but I also think you probably believe it's reasonable. And going for goals that are reasonable aren't terribly inspiring. Going for goals that actually fulfill you and light you up are crazy inspiring, but they also come with it fear because, maybe that's too much. That's too aggressive. What if I don't do it? But it's inspiring. Like, would you work harder to make an extra $10 or an extra $10 million? It's like, it's obvious, right? So 5 years, I think you can do it if you want, but what is it you really want? If you could run, let me ask you this. Do you believe that you could? You don't have to know how, but do you believe that you could run a sub-3 within 2 years?
No.
Is that possible?
No.
Okay. And if you think it's not possible, I would side with that and say, okay, what do you think is possible? And if you think it's 3 years, we'll go with 3 years. But I'd also ask you, why do you not think it's possible? I wouldn't try to change your mind because that's what you want. Hey, but then you're going to be working with the coach for 3 years. And I'm telling you, you could get the result much faster. You don't have to, of course, but you could. Why do you think that 2 years would not be enough time?
I think given that a half time of, under 90 minutes is required, and I've been running for 2 years now and I haven't hit it, it's kind of just building off the training history I have.
Yeah.
And not only do I have to reach the sub 90, but then I also have to get the marathon distance. So it's like a double goal that's beyond where I'm at currently. So that's why it's the extra time.
Okay. So why not more time? It seems reasonable, but I'm trying to understand your thought process for this. Why not 5 to 10 years? I mean, you're 31, you can run well when you're 41. Why not take a real conservative approach?
I think then it's too far away. It's kind of out of my reach, So
exactly. Yeah. That's how I help people with their goals is I say that there's 2 criteria, not to hitting a goal, but for me to help you with a goal. And the criteria are, number 1, the goal you're going after has to inspire you. So maybe completing a marathon, oh, that's nice, but maybe it's not that inspiring. I bet you believe you could do a marathon if you ran really slow and took walking breaks and just were out there all day. You could probably just do it right now, right?
Totally.
So just completing the marathon maybe isn't super inspiring. So we want a goal that is inspiring. 3 hours, sure as heck, is inspiring. So yay. And then second is you have to believe that you can do it within whatever time frame that you set for yourself. So, I mean, can a human being break 2 hours in the marathon? Well, we're starting to believe so because Kipchoge did it and Kiptum says he's going to do it coming up this spring, right? So we're starting as a society to believe it, but this is only recent. If you rewind 10 years, no. 2 hours? No, ain't happening. Like the greatest of all time, they're running, I mean, in just the last like 15 years, right? I've got a poster I have this running room over there, and I've got a poster that's signed by Khalid Kanuchi, who in 2005 was the world record holder in the marathon. And his time is like 2:06 something, I think so. And that wasn't that long ago, man. So, but nobody believed they could run under 2. So anyway, I'm going on a tangent here. You have to be inspired by your goal and you have to believe that you can do it. Whatever it is. I mean, can a human run an hour 30 in the marathon? Probably nobody believes that they can. So it's nobody's going to even try remotely. Okay. But if they did, if Kiptum really believed that, could it be done? I don't know. The skeptics would have a field day with trying to say, oh, it's impossible. Yeah, but they used to say that about 2 hours as well. And the 4 hour mile. And it's now what? 3:42 or 3:43. It's like, we're so far under 4 minutes. Can you believe that? Like Roger Bannister breaking 4 minutes was like such a huge deal. And now runners can run 3:43, 17 seconds. They're like almost half a lap ahead of Bannister. That's insane. So there's no way that someone back in the 50s would have believed that a 3:43 is humanly possible. It'd have been just like laugh, no freaking way. So same thing, you have to believe it. So I think you're probably right because it's an inspiring goal and you believe you can do it. So do you believe that you can run a sub 3 in 3 years?
That's kind of the gray area, you know? That's kind of like the mid, you know?
Okay. 5 years.
5 years. So I think I'm going to run a 3 hour marathon before I die. It's like a foregone conclusion. It's just a case of when it happens.
Hope you don't die too soon then.
Touch wood. But yeah, it's like, how much am I willing to kind of sacrifice and how much am I willing to sort of invest in the goal, you know? I think that's kind of, yeah.
That's it. Sacrifice.
Yeah.
So if you have to sacrifice, probably shouldn't do it. But let's clarify just a little because we think that as we almost take like a badge of honor. I've sacrificed. I don't go out socializing and I don't drink with my friends. And on Christmas morning, I ran when everybody else was opening presents because I sacrifice. No, you didn't. Maybe you did. But did you sacrifice or did you want to do those things? I ran on Christmas morning before I did presents with my family because I knew later in the day I was going to eat a bunch of food and wouldn't feel like running and it's time with family. So I ran in the morning. Was it a sacrifice? No, it was like a nice way to start my day. But my ego could be like, look how much I sacrifice. And when we do that, I think what we're doing is we're trying to demand from some external authority that I've paid my dues and so I deserve the booty. I've paid my dues. I've showed up. It doesn't matter. You can work really hard and then die before you run the race. Like God forbid you die, right? But if you work really hard and you get to sub 3 hour shape and then you get hit by a meteor, it's like, oops, you didn't do it. So when it comes to sacrificing that, if you feel that you're having to make a sacrifice in the long term, you're not going to sustain it because who wants to sacrifice? Really? And you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to sustain it. It feels effortful. And those are the antithesis to the kinds of training that'll get you a breakthrough in performance. It should feel, or it could feel, light, inspiring, like there's momentum going. It could feel, those are good examples. I'll stop there. Could feel light and easy. You take the same action, you get out the door and you run 10 miles. One of them is because I have to, and I'm a badass. And one of them is because I get to and I want to. Thank God that I have the health and the ability and the time to be able to do this in a city that's relatively safe with modern running shoes, 5 pairs of them for goodness sakes. And I have multiple changes of running clothes, and I have a wife to high five me when I come back, and I have a cool GPS running watch. Wow, how privileged am I? And I get to go run 10 miles, yahoo, before work. It's like same 10 miles, but that person has a much different experience than the person who's like, I have to do this because my social peers expect that I should run 3 hours and I should have done it before. And it's like same 10 miles, much different experience. And then so here's 2 questions for you. First one, of those 2 runners, who's more likely to get the time?
The one with the kind of get to mindset, I would call it.
I would probably agree. They're probably more likely to get a better result long-term because they stick with it longer, but not necessarily. You can push your way to some degree, but even if they both got the time they wanted, whose life do you want to live?
The one making less sacrifice, the one just, kind of internally motivated.
So there's no reason to be the one who pushes hard other than the ego telling you think you should. And sometimes that's okay. I think sometimes it's fun to just like train super crazy hard. But I mean, I hear myself say that and I'm like, you know what? As I say it, I don't even believe it. That's not true. I just have memories of times in my life where I used to like kind of like get off on being someone who's like, ugh. I talk about this in the book. I tell a story of a runner on my high school team who said he would chop his manhood off if it meant he could run faster or make nationals or something like that. And it's like, that was probably true, but probably would have been the wrong decision. I don't know. I don't know. But things are like kind of dramatic when there's a time for that. There's a time for being like hyper disciplined and sacrificing. But I think it's very, no, I don't even believe it. I'm trying to convince myself here. I don't believe it. It's bull. There's no such thing as a sacrifice, because if you want to do it, it's a loving thing. Like if you sacrificed your life for your family, is it a sacrifice? You couldn't take that ability from someone. For like a father to like give his life to save his wife and children, he would happily do it. In fact, he would insist on doing it. Where's the sacrifice? It brings immense fulfillment and joy to be able to do it. Now you could call it a sacrifice, and I don't want to get like too hung up on words here, but a little bit, because your words shape your reality. If you say, I sacrifice, I think what you're really saying is, I didn't really want to do it. This isn't sustainable, but because I paid the price, I now deserve the booty. And that is a recipe for, if you don't get it, watch out. That's the kind of person who's going to be angry, and they're going to cross the finish line and they're just going to be and be kind of an asshole to their family after and kick something. And like, that's that person, because they thought they deserved it because they paid their dues, but there are no dues to pay. The dues to pay, I believe, now you could agree or not with this, but I know this to be sure. I know this to be true in my life. To each their own. But your only duty is to cultivate the internal state of the life that you want. That's it. Because we don't have control of what is outside of us. Like nothing. Give it a long enough time frame, you don't have control of any of it. Even like your relationship, even if you've been married for 20 years or 30 years, it's like, how many people are in that situation and then they cheat or whatever like that? It's like nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is within your control. Nothing except one thing. And Viktor Frankl, I think, wrote best about this from any author who I've ever read. I've read a lot on this, but Man's Search for Meaning. It's a classic book. It's been a bestseller for half a century. I won't tell the whole story, but essentially Viktor Frankl is a survivor of the Holocaust. And his book is called Man's Search for Meaning, because what he found is that even in the most difficult situation, and it's hard to argue that being in a concentration camp, that life could get more difficult than that. It's like pretty much the extreme, And he was able to find meaning in going through that, in the process of being there. And the one thing we hear, it kind of sounds cliche, but actually take a second to like reintroduce this into our minds, because we've heard it 1,000 times, is that the one thing that they can't take is what this means to me, how I feel inside. So I kind of forgot why we're going this direction, but with your running, It's not any different. Running is not like this different thing from self-development, spiritual development, financial, business development. It's all the same thing. And cultivating, our job is to cultivate that experience inside. And it's like, that's kind of like, sounds a little woo or a little like spiritual, but yeah, sure. As is life, is it not? And I think that if you get to the end of your life and you have the time on the clock, but you sacrifice the whole way there, you might feel different than if you didn't have the time on the clock, but enjoyed it. And like I say, the dirty little trick is that by enjoying it, you're much more likely to actually get the thing you want. But then the trick, there's like a double-edged trick here. The trick, the real trick is that if you think that by letting go of the outcome and enjoying the process is the way to get the thing, you've just, getting the thing has just snuck in the back door. You're really doing it as a tactic to get the thing and you're back where you were. It's an actual release of the outcome in exchange for cultivating who you need to be. And if you actually do that, a nice consequence is that you get the result. Like they say, the rich get rich, the poor get poor. Yeah, the rich and fulfilled and loving tend to get more richness and fulfillment and loving. Happy people tend to get more happy. Depressed people and angry people tend to get more angry and depressed. And it's the same thing.
So are you referring to going from a state of like external motivation, like I want to get that 3-hour marathon goal, to bringing it inside, going internal and just running just purely simply because you enjoy it, and then sort of tweaking or strategically training just slightly towards the goal? How does it look in practice?
Yeah, it's just knowing what you want. If the answer was really that you want the time, then okay, I'm reminded of Kenenisa Bekele. And I don't follow his career as much right now. He's like mostly retired. I think he's not really retired. He just got a new sponsorship. But anyway, back in his like track days when he was the world record holder in the 5K and the 10K, I remember a story of him. So this is coming out of like my distant memory if I get some of this wrong. But the essential story was that, he has a wife. I think he still has a wife. And he left his home in order to live at training camp leading up to whatever, the 2000 Olympics or whatever it was, 2004. And he left that behind because he really, really did want the world records, the Olympic gold medals, even at the cost of spending time with his family. Now, it wasn't forever, but he's a serious guy, right? It was for a prolonged time. Now, would I tell him not to focus on the Olympic gold? No, because he's decided that that's what he wants, and he accepts that it cost him other things in his life. He's not building a business. He's not being a father. He's not being a husband. He's in a freaking training camp all day, every day training, because he determined for himself, this is his purpose now. And I respect that. And let everything else fall away if it's what you choose. But most people, running is not that high of a priority. So I think you asked me
internal versus external motivation.
I hope you don't have external motivation, because that would be like a gun to your head or something like that. And then do it, I guess, maybe. But internal motivation is just like leverage on yourself. So without a gun to your head, how do we metaphorically put the gun to our own head inside? And that's just an internal thing. Is there anything else other than internal motivation? Can you get someone to do something they don't want to do? I don't know. I guess if you put a gun to their head. But hopefully our running is not quite that extreme. So I think there is only internal motivation. Like, what is the external motivation? It's the time on the clock. It's that lure, right? But it's not really the time on the clock. It's when you have that, why do you want that time on the clock? Why do you want a sub 3 as opposed to a 3:05 or a 2:55? I mean, go ahead and answer that if you like.
Say that again. Why do I want a 2:55 versus 3:05?
Why do you want a sub 3 as opposed to a sub 3:05 or a sub 2:55?
I think it's a realistic goal that is also challenging, achievable, meaningful, and on the way to other goals, So it's not just the 3-hour goal isn't let's say the 3 to 5 hour timeline. The 3 hour goal isn't actually the goal. The goal is to see how fast I can run, you know? And like the Olympics are coming to LA, and I won't be there, but I'm like, you know, I want to see how fast I can run, and I know it's coming. So it's kind of like, I want to explore the whole journey. And
there we go. So hold on, let me stop you there. You just told me it's not the sub 3. It's to explore, to see how far you can go, to see how fast you can run. That's the goal. And it's not because a woo-woo coach tried to shift your time goal into believing it's this honky-tonk thing. No. I just asked you what it is you want, and you told me, because it's the truth. It's not the time on the clock. If you get to explore your body's limits. Prefontaine had a quote like this. It said, and now to explore the limits of the one competitor above all others you've always loved to face. Something like that. To explore the limits. That's why the movie about him, there's 2, is called Without Limits. To explore. What are those limits? Don't know, but it's sure fun to explore. And if you can do that, it gives your life fulfillment because you have adventure, you have variety, you get to grow. And these things are very fulfilling. Also, you said you want to see how fast you can run. Cool. And there's a little caveat to that because it's like within reason, within the lifestyle that you want, because you're not going to like move to Kenya, and maybe you will. But see how fast you can run, see how good you can do, and explore the journey, explore your limits. If you did that, I think that you might run a 3:15 and be very satisfied, or you might blow through a 3 hour and run a 2:30 and be very satisfied. And who knows? But as long as you explore and test your limits and take meaningful action and see how fast you actually can go, if you did that, you're very fulfilled, and the time didn't matter. It doesn't mean don't go for the time. It just means the time didn't matter, because it didn't. I mean, try to prove that wrong. Did the time really matter? If Kipton breaks 2 hours, does that really matter? It matters to all of us out here. It matters to him because he's going to get like many $1 million payday. Like, it kind of matters. But at the end of his life, when he's like slipping away, is he going to say, I ran 1:59.59 and not 2 hours flat, 0.1? And if that's the standard by which he measures the success of his life, hey man, that's not the life I want. It's cool. Go do things. Like, I think we have a body. Now, like, this is going a little bit like spiritual too, but hey, that's the way that I work here. It is my belief that we could go into this forever and we won't here, but essentially, to boil it down, and I think a lot of people, this will resonate with a lot of people, that you are not a body, you have a body. Perhaps you could say you are a spirit, an entity, an awareness, a consciousness. Maybe you don't even have to agree with that, but you are that having a human experience. You could agree or not. This is the direction I'm heading right now, though. I forget what I was going to say after that. Hold on. What direction were we going with that? Yeah. So you have a body for a reason. If we just wanted to be like enlightened beings, there'd be no reason for any of this. But you have a body because you can do things with it. Yay, including run. So it's a good idea to do the thing. So it's a good idea to get the time and run the distance. But it's not the outcome. It's the target. The outcome is the life that you've lived to get that. Because you may never hit it, or you may far exceed it. Because if you got what you wanted, it might be pretty miserable. If you want that sub 3 and you get 2:59, you got what you wanted. But what if you could have got 2:29? You got what you wanted, and we stagnated you. Or what if you're a high schooler or a young adult who works at McDonald's and you make whatever amount of money there and you want to move up because you want more money. So you have a goal of becoming the manager of McDonald's because you'll make, 50% more money. That's the goal. But when you look back on your life later, you might be grateful that you didn't get what you wanted. Because by not getting what you wanted, you left McDonald's and you started a corporate job somewhere or built a business, and you're far further along than you would have been had you got the thing you thought you wanted. So we don't even know what we want. But we do know how we want to feel. That that kid who wanted to move up to manager, what he really wanted was more abundance of finances, more freedom, more authority, maybe those things, more time freedom, more scheduling freedom, more autonomy, more respect. He might have wanted those things. Those are feelings. So he can cultivate those feelings. And the quickest way to unlock a lot of those is maybe doing something else than like pursuing that hierarchy. So thank goodness we don't always get what we want because we don't know what we want, but we know how we want to feel. That's our job. So it kind of brings us back to 15, 20 minutes ago, we were talking about your job is to know the internal state that you want to live in. One of my mentors here, Tony Robbins, I've got his picture right there, calls this living in a beautiful state. Actually, I've got a necklace on right now. It says 4 different things on it. But one of them, it says beautiful state. I know you can't read that. It says beautiful state. It's a reminder that it's a choice. The place that's inside, and a lot of times, oftentimes, people love to argue this as well because it puts responsibility squarely on you, and that's very uncomfortable. Can be. But it is a choice to be whatever emotional state we're in is a choice. It doesn't mean we can't get triggered. I get triggered. But your emotional home, the emotional state you're in, the emotional home, let's say it's like here, you can get knocked down and you can make a choice. And it is a choice that I'm not going to stay there, no matter how bad you feel. I feel this, I acknowledge it, I work through it, I maybe learn from it, but I'm not going to stay here because that's a choice. And then you decide to bring yourself back to your emotional home, your beautiful state. But my partner cheated and this person died and I lost yep, I feel for you. But how it affects you inside is a choice. It's a hard pill to swallow because then if that's the case, we have to take 100% responsibility for our entire life, regardless of whether we've been a victim or abused or hurt or stolen from or cheated on or I don't know, you name it. All those things. I can understand their triggers and we're humans, but it is, I believe it's our responsibility to cultivate. That's the only thing we can do because we can't change if you were a kid and someone abused you, you're not going to go back and change that. But are you going to choose for it to determine how you feel just inside, how you feel for the rest of your life? Because if you want to change how you feel, imagine someone knocked on your door and they had, congratulations, you've won the sweepstakes, $10 million. You'd probably go smile, yay, dance around, slap some high fives, cry, say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then tell all your friends and you'd have a really nice day. But all that happened was that a stranger hit some wood with their knuckles and gave you a piece of paper that had some ink on it. That's all that happened. But it gave us permission within ourselves to flip the switch of an emotion. And oftentimes we think we need the thing outside. If the person says they love me, if the check for $10 million comes, if I get approval on social media, then click, I feel a certain way. And it's true. We all have triggers and switches. And also, just understand, the only thing that did was gave us permission to allow ourselves to feel an emotion. Negative emotions too. If someone says, I hate you, you're ugly, it depends who says it. But if like the right person says it or the wrong person says it, it might flip that switch to where you feel, ugh. Maybe, but it's the same thing. All it did was give you permission to flip that switch in yourself. I'm not saying that these things aren't real, that triggers don't exist. They do. And it's also true that only we can give ourselves permission to feel a certain way within a degree, at least to stay in a certain way. So it's the same thing with our running. You want the goal because you think you'll feel a certain way. Your job is to feel that way. And that is how you get the goal. But what about the tempo runs? Yeah. Are you more or less likely to do the tempo runs if you feel good about it versus then if you have to sacrifice? Anyway, I just ranted at you for a long time there, so I'll stop.
No, that's great. So kind of twofold question. So one is goals, right? Goals are important. Maybe they're not in your opinion, but where do they fit in? Because we need an aim or we need like direction. But also you're talking about internal state a lot. And, you know, if you have a new client or someone's new to this, how do they get started on instead of focusing on like the likes or money or external, times in their running, how do they get started on changing that internal state before they've reached the goal?
Oh, you make a decision. That's it. So there's 4 parts to this. I thought we were going a different way with this. We can get even more practical and talk about training too. Like that's part of this, because that's a tool that we use. It's not just feel and then magic. It's feel and then take action. So that's a good segue into this. There's 4 parts of this. It is make a decision, then use your personal power to take massive action. Sorry, there's 3 parts, not 4. So if you want something new in your life, most people will just take action towards it. And that's not a bad idea. We all hear you should take massive action. Sure. But if you take the wrong action, if you want to build a house and you start like, I don't know, eating Cheetos, it's like, I can't think of a better example. It's like, that's the wrong tactic to build a house. You need to swing a hammer, right? So just taking action is not the best place to start. It will give you little bits of improvement and you just hope for the best. But let's back up. There's 3 parts to this. It's make a decision and then use your personal power, we'll talk about that in a second, to take action. So the first part is making a decision. Without a decision, you haven't done anything. And a real decision is measured by the fact that you've taken a new action. Without a new action, you haven't truly decided. Again, that's a quote, credit where credit's due. That's a direct quote from Tony Robbins. I have it up on my wall. Make a decision, and then why not just make a decision and then take massive action? There's that middle part. If you make a decision, then take massive action, you'll probably do okay until it gets hard, until you're tired or you're injured or you're depressed or you have to move or there's the C word in the world. Until that happens, then you have an excuse to not take the action anymore. You made a decision, but it's outside your control. The world shut down. So there's that second step. So it's make a decision, then use your ability to cultivate the emotional state that's needed to get the job done in order to take massive action. So for you, you said you want to explore, see how fast you can run. There's probably more things too, but for the sake of time. So make a decision that you're going to run sub 3. Make a decision that it's done. See it as done. Maybe it's done 5 years from now, but you've got to believe a real decision says it's done. No matter what. What if you get sick? Doesn't matter. I'll rest and then cross train. What if you break your foot? I'll hop on one freaking foot. It's like, there's no stopping you. You decide, then cultivate the emotions that you need in order to take massive action. Why haven't you already been running 80 miles a week? Well, because I have this and this and this. Okay. And those are certain emotions. What emotions would you need to have in order to do the massive action? And I say 80 miles a week because if you want to run sub 3, 60 to 80 is kind of where a lot of people would fall who are in that range. So, but why haven't you already done it? Because either you hadn't decided or you hadn't cultivated the emotions that will govern you to do the kind of sleep you need, the kind of nutrition you need, the kind of training you need, the kind of consistency you need, the kind of strength training you need. Those are decisions that are governed by emotion. When you feel depressed, you're less likely to hit the gym than when you feel motivated and sexy, then you'll hit the gym. Emotion govern the action. So that's why it is practical. You do take practical action for sure. It's just not what we lead with. You lead with making a decision, back it up and fuel it with who you're becoming in the process. And then use that. It's instead of just like a little punching bag, it's like, take action, take action, take action. We have like all this energy behind it. And then it's like, wham, and the thing just blows up. And try to find an example where that's not true, even in the sporting world. I mean, throw a runner at me or any other sport, literally. And this is the case. I mean, Kipchoge, when he broke 2 hours, right before he did at the press conference, he tried breaking 2 hours 2 years before at the Nike Breaking 2 project. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And he failed. Oh no, he didn't fail. He just measured early and had to change tactics. Then they asked him 2 years later at the Ineos project, they said, Kipchoge, what's changed in your training? What's changed now? And he said, he put his hands like this. I got goosebumps here. And he said, and I've listened to this like 100 times, it's probably verbatim. He says,
so my training has been the same. My coach has been the same. The management, everything has been the same. Now the thinking is different.
He trained the same coach, same nutrition, nothing changed. Now the thinking's different. Boom, sub 2 hour. Okay. Michael Johnson, until Usain Bolt came along, I would say Michael Johnson was the greatest sprinter of all time. I guess you could argue that, but he was pretty dang good. Same thing. He wrote a book on it called Slaying the Dragon, on his difference between the Barcelona 1992 Olympics and the Atlanta 1996 Olympics. What changed? He went from like an Olympian who's okay to world record, gold medal in the relay, in the 400, in the 200, boom, fire in his eyes. He even wore gold shoes to the starting line before he had done those things. His certainty about being a gold medalist was so strong that he wore gold shoes. As far as I know, the only other Olympian to wear gold shoes, I could be wrong, was Usain Bolt. But Usain Bolt did it like a decade after him. Michael Johnson had the balls to get custom gold shoes and wear them on the blocks before the gun goes off. Who do you think's going to win? That was the level of his confidence. That's an emotion. Think of Prefontaine. We love Prefontaine. Why? Because he goes, beats his chest and says he'll kill anybody. He had a lot of confidence. Prefontaine's confidence came from a different place, though. His came from, I love the guy. I love Prefontaine. But he had more of an ego than did Kipchoge or Haile Gebrselassie. And that's why when Kipchoge didn't break 2 hours, he was fine. When Prefontaine got 4th place at the Olympics, he was crushed. That's okay. Hey, he's Prefontaine. He kicked my butt. But his ego was attached to it. And so it crushed him. And it took him a while before he came back and then declared he's going to go for a world record. And then guess what? Yeah, he died. And we still love him. But think of other, like, you name the sporting hero. Go, Carrie Strug. She's like maybe my favorite example. You remember Carrie Strug?
Never heard the name before. Who's Carrie Strug?
Holy moly. 1996 Olympics, Carrie Strug. I've got 2 videos on YouTube on this and a video in my course on this. But what a great story. I'll try to give the cliff notes here, but what a great story. She's a little girl. I think she was 14 because, young girls on the gymnastics team. She's a young woman and she's on the US gymnastics teams at the Olympics. And it basically always comes down to the US versus Russia, and Russia always wins. There's they call it like the curse because the Russians always win. So this Olympics though, the US was doing really well. The women's team, they were far ahead. And it came down so dramatic. It came down to the last event, which was the women's vault. And the women are ahead. They're going to break the curse. And Carrie Strug goes to vault and she lands and essentially breaks her ankle. And she can't walk on it. She's crying. She falls down on the ground. They carry her away. They patch it up. And on the vault, if she doesn't complete the next vault, she gets a 0. And a 0 would ensure that the US does not win. So the curse wins out. But Carrie Strug, and I suggest you watch this video as soon as we hang up. What a girl. This girl's a hero of mine. If I ever see her or meet her, I'm going to just give her a big hug and tell her how much I love her. This little girl, she gets on the runway with a broken ankle that she moments ago couldn't walk on or put pressure on whatsoever. And she decided that she's doing this. And she didn't just decide that she's going to put pressure on it. She decided that she's going to do a world-class vault, stick the landing, and win an Olympic gold medal on a broken freaking ankle. That's what she decided. And there's no explaining it. How do you explain how she did this? Because she can't stand on it. She runs down the runway. The whole world is watching. They know that this is going on. She vaults, she tumbles, and if she doesn't stick the landing, that's it. And she sticks the freaking landing. Sticks it. And that's not enough. She has to hold it and do a little bow because gymnastics. So she holds it. She does the little bow for 1 second, however long she needs to. And then, now it comes on. Now the pain comes on. Now she lets it go and she falls down to the ground and she's nursing herself and the medics come and get her and carry her away. But she did it and she stuck the landing on a broken ankle. Now, we're talking about mindset with elite performance here, not just runners. We can do this in any sport. I could talk about this for tennis, for golf, boxing, martial arts. There's gymnastics for you. And it wasn't her training. It wasn't her training. Not even 1%. Now her training really mattered because it got her to the Olympics. But the person we remember her as had nothing to do with her training and everything to do with her ability to, guess what? Make a decision. Use her ability to focus how she feels inside to take world-class massive action. Boom, boom, boom. We remember her forever. She's immortalized, Olympic gold medal, broke the curse. Not because of the reps in the gym or the training plan. Nope. Those things mattered because they got her there. They're part of the process. They mattered. But the thing that mattered was that process.
Wow, that's inspirational. I'm definitely going to watch that video after this. And I think with that, Andrew, I've taken enough of your time. Is there any final kind of message or links or info you want to tell people about before we wrap up?
Wow. It went fast. My voice is kind of hoarse. I've been talking all day on coaching calls. Yeah, so I'll say this to people to leave. Everything that we talked about here is the stuff that I wanted you to hear. It just kind of like came out here because this is where I'm most passionate about. The training really matters. There is a very definitive science to peaking yourself for your training. And we do that too. World-class runners do that too. And I hope that one of the takeaways you can have here is that if you lead with just stacking on more training, is unlikely to lead to the result that you really want. It is likely to lead to the short-term result. But the thing that you really want, the goal that will light you up, that really changes your life for you in a meaningful way, that really inspires you, that starts from a different place. And then we support that different place through the health of our body, which we didn't talk about much here today. I have loads of content on that in my YouTube channel, in my book. You can read those. And then we take massive action. Remember, the third part of that sequence is massive action, massive, intelligent, right action for you. So I'm going to give you I suggest, hey, self-plug here. I put all this in my book, but I just want you to see kind of like visually. The book is broken into 3 sections. The first section is mindset. Here we go. And mindset is that much. Okay. So it's very important. But then I want you to see this just visually. The training section on how to exactly structure your workouts for your peak performance is that big. Okay. It's the vast majority of the book. And then we do special hacks, modern techniques, things like that. That's that big. So I just want you to see the visual. Yeah, we do the training. You should too. Elite runners do too. But the best of the best, they lead with something else. And if you can combine those 2 things, 3 things really, lifestyle and nutrition, sleep, health, with your mindset and emotion, with elite training structure, if you use all 3 of those, you have a 3-fold or more advantage over someone who just does the training. Really, it's hard pill to swallow because it sounds like just tell me the workouts to do, but that's what everybody says, except people who are truly world-class. They don't just say, tell me what to do. They back it up. And that's hopefully something that this conversation has helped you. If you want to find more from me, YouTube, it's all free. Run Elite on YouTube, Instagram at Run Elite Coach. You can pick up the book on Amazon. It's called Run Elite, Train and Think Like the Greatest Runners of All Time. It's on Kindle as well. It's on Audible. If you don't have an Audible, you can get a free trial and then get a free book, and you can get the book for free. So there's no excuse unless you don't want to educate yourself for one, or if you didn't like me for whatever reason, don't read my book. But there's no reason not to. If you want coaching, I'm not going to even talk about that here. You'll find me. You just reach out to me and we'll talk about that. We have a conversation. And thank you for having me on. I hope anybody who listened got some value from this. That's why I'm here. I really hope you did. Anything else?
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I can't recommend your channel, Run Elite, on YouTube enough. That's where I came across you. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. Hey, I hope that you enjoyed that podcast. Now stay tuned for part 2. We're going to post it on Ross's channel, and we're going to post it on my channel, Run Elite here. So check back in a couple of weeks and we will have part 2, which will be setting up your training and a lot of the nitty gritty of how to actually tweak your training for long-term success and a peak result. I'll see you on that. I'm glad you enjoyed number 1. You made it to the end of the video. Make sure that you subscribe to this so that you don't miss part 2. I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.